Okay, Chair, when you're ready, we're now live on YouTube. Thank you.
Debbie. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's Asset Management Forum meeting on November the 4th, 2022, a glorious East Devon with crisp winter's day. I am your chair, Councillor Paul Hayward. I'd also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live streaming. May I politely remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting, and we also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn off any telephone devices or put them to silent. In the event of a break in internet connection, please bear with us as we will try to reconnect after 15 minutes. If we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned excuse me, and reconvene at a later date. We will now start this meeting by doing a roll call of forum members here present. Over to you, Debbie. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself. Councillor Hayward, please.
I am present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott, I have apologies from. Councillor Rowland, please.
Present, thanks, Debbie.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt, please.
Present.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
And Councillor Rylance, I don't see it on the call. So you are quorate, Chair. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Debbie. So agenda item 1 on the agenda, which is available online, is public speaking, and there are no members of the public registered to speak this morning, so we will move straight to agenda item 2. Notes of a previous meeting held on the 21st of June 2022. These are available to members and members of the public. If anyone has a comment on these notes, please do so by raising your electronic hand or your physical hand. If I see no electronic hands raised or any other intimation of intent, I will take this as an indication that you will agree to those minutes. And I think that's a positive, yes. So thank you very much. We'll take those minutes as agreed. Agenda item 3, apologies. We have had apologies from Councillor Arnott, who is on his annual leave. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. When your name is called and mindful of the new Code of Conduct, could you please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to, and state what the interest is and the specific type of interest that you are declaring. Debbie, if you could talk us through this, please.
Yeah, of course, Chair. So just to add on to the apologies, that Councillor Jeff Pook, although he's not on the forum anymore, has sent his apologies too.
Oh,
so
thank you so much.
That's all right. So declarations for yourself, please, Councillor Hayward.
I would wish to make a declaration under agenda item 8 and agenda item 9. I think that's it, and that is in respect of my employment with Axminster Town Council as their clerk, and both of those would be an effects NRI, and none of them affect me personally or financially, but it's best to make that declaration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Jack Rowland, any declarations, please?
Sorry, desperately trying to unmute myself then.
That's okay.
None that I'm aware of, thanks, Debbie.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pratt, any declarations this morning?
I have no interest to declare, Debbie.
Lovely, thank you. Any other councillors on the call this morning have any declarations to declare? Speak now.
Hold your peace.
Marvellous. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So we move now on to item 5, matters of urgency. I do believe there are none. Debbie, have you made me aware of any?
No, there are no matters of urgency, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, confidential exempt items. There are no items on this agenda which officers consider should be dealt in this way, so everything will be dealt in part 1 public session. And then we move now to agenda item 7, the Exmouth placemaking update. And may I invite Jerry, who's with us on this call, to speak on this item. Jerry, over to you, sir.
Morning, Paul. Thank you, Debbie.
Morning.
A very, very short report, Chair, really just to keep you up to date with what is taking place. Lots of stuff behind the scenes and not terribly public, which sometimes is also good. So we have completed our consultation exercise. We've had a number of consultations face-to-face, quite well attended. We've also had an online questionnaire, which we had 861 responses to. We commissioned independent research, specifically targeting the public visiting Exmouth to get their views on placemaking. And we took that to the Placemaking in Exmouth Town and Seafront Group, previously known as the Queen's Drive Delivery Group, Chair. You will recall that. I add that only just to make sure that everybody's clear on where we currently are. That went to the PETS group, as we refer to them, on the 10th of October, and subsequently, as of this week, Tuesday evening, went to Cabinet and will go on to full council for a recommendation to appoint consultants to develop the terms of reference. We have had a little bit of slippage, Chair, which I must apologise for. We had a combination of factors in terms of workload, staff being off sick with COVID, and a few other things. So we have had about 6 weeks of slippage, but I'm quite confident that we can pull that back in due course. Really, what I've set out is the provisional timetable at part 1.2, and we're quite content that will still take place in that order and following that timeline. Chair, just moving on, then in terms of Queen's Drive, we had a very helpful meeting with our tenants, and we took a paper to the Placemaking and Exmouth Town and Seafront Group to agree to recommend to Cabinet to delegate that we would grant renewed leases for the incoming season. The aim for that, Chair, really, to be honest, was we were a little bit lastminute.com through staff shortages and other things in terms of actually granting those leases, and it has not helped the tenants to plan for the year ahead. So our aim is to get those leases in place. I'm pleased to advise you that as of the 31st, which was Monday, all 5 of our tenants have actually put in requests to renew their leases, which gives us a little bit of stability. It gives us a little bit of, lead-in time and all of those things. So we've also agreed, we've taken a recommendation to Cabinet, which was agreed on Tuesday evening, for a small discount as an incentive for them to sign up early, and that hopefully will allow us to get a better lead-in time, more stability, and get a more vibrant situation going at Queen's Drive. We also have a proposal in from LED in regard to the fitness space. I can go into that detail if you wish, Chair, but probably it's a little bit much for this meeting. And really moving on from there, we have the levelling up bid, which, as you know, was submitted in August. There was some slippage there, but given the what's been going on at Westminster for the past little while, we were hoping to hear in November. I'm not sure that we'll hear in November. I think there will be some slippage as various ministers find their feet and various things. The proposal for the industrial units at Salterton Road, Redgates, we're still working with you. You're aware that we've had that conversation. We are negotiating the heads of terms. We're not on site or anything like that, Chair. So we have plenty of latitude, and if needs be and things were not satisfactory, we actually have a backstop that would get the council out of any situation there if we had to. So far, I have to say that the people we're working with have been very proactive and very positive, and we have no reason to doubt that things will go well. One item that's not on the report just is that Cabinet have approved the lease of part of Exmouth Town Hall to the NHS. That's for a total of 19 desk spaces, but initially 9 in the full occupancy. They have a completely self-contained office. It won't be an NHS practice situation. It's their administration and back office function. So that certainly will help to offset any costs arising from managing the town hall. All staff that are there can, of course, be relocated within the same building with minimal fuss and disruption. Chair, happy to take questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Jerry. So just before I open this out, and obviously Councillor Hookway's with us with his portfolio role. I know during the conference that I attended in the last couple of days, there was quite a focus on Westminster coming and goings and certainly levelling up. And I believe the figure that was quoted was of the £4.8 billion that was set aside for levelling up, some 3% has actually been allocated, which according to my calculator on the screen is 144 million, which is not an inconsiderable sum, but in relation to the 4.8 billion, I think it shows that there's certainly some work to be done there. I seem to recall that within your report, we hope to hear the outcome November 22. Last I heard, it was likely to be the end of the year. So all we can do is keep our fingers crossed. But I'm sure Councillor Rowland can come back to us. That he'll have some insight on that. So on the report, can I open it out to members who are not on the Asset Management Forum? If anyone wishes to speak or ask questions or seek some clarity on what Jerry has just presented. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Jerry for his report. I'll be very brief. It's just about red gates. The red gates where we're thinking about the 4 commercial units. Does anybody heard? Is there any interest in those commercial units? Do we have somebody seeking them, or are we intending to do commercial units, or do we have other thoughts in mind for that site? It's just a general question, really. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything out. I've not had any comment at all from residents about this, but I want to be proactive. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Nick. Jerry, would you like to come back on that?
Yes, Chair, very, very happy to come back on that. So the option to build is actually part of a unilateral undertaking. So the planning consent cannot be easily varied. I think actually I'm probably paraphrasing, but also quoting yourself. What we don't want in there is a panel beater next to an elderly care facility, hopefully for self-explanatory reasons, Chair. The option to build is based on our analysis, because we objected to the loss of employment land originally, if you recall. I'm sure you do. So what we've actually taken is a sounding on that. We have demand for industrial units, significant demand. Indeed, the landowner, who is McCarthy and Stone, have actually been approached by a potential tenant, a potential purchaser for that site if we did not wish to take up this option, and that would be to take over the entire site. So I'm quite satisfied that we will not be taking on a white elephant, for want of a better term. I'm very confident that we'll be able, in discussion with our colleagues in economic development, that there is a demand for these types of units, and I'm quite confident that we will fill them with good, stable tenants. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Jerry. Is that okay, Nick?
Yes, fine. That's ideal. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. Jack, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. You already touched on it, actually, because you mentioned about the levelling up the timescales for hearing decisions. And Simon Clarke, who I believe was Mr. Gove's predecessor as the levelling up minister, had made an announcement that it had slipped to the end of the year. Always worries me when I hear things like end of the year, because the timescales for actually spending the money aren't going to change. So it's reducing the window for spending the money even more. I've not yet heard anything from Mr. Gove, who's back in the chair as the levelling up minister now, but hopefully we do keep to that timescale, and there's nothing going to be announced in the 17th of November spending review that's going to affect what's in that levelling up bit, which is my other concern as to why that timescale might have slipped. I just wanted to ask a question as well that Jerry touched on when he was talking about Exmouth Town Hall. I don't know if this is the right time to be asking this, but can you tell me if the negotiations actually started with Exmouth Town Council about the renewal of their lease? Because I believe from memory that's the renewal's coming up fairly soon.
Chair, happy to take that. Just to come back on the issue of levelling up, we do have live planning consent, excellent planning consent for a major part of that scheme. So I loathe the term, but it is very shovel ready. So even if there's a delay in the announcement, I'm quite confident that we can get it underway. So I'd like to give members a bit of confidence there that certainly both ourselves and County Council have been extremely proactive in that regard. In regard to Exmouth Town Hall's lease, or Exmouth Town Council's lease at the Town Hall, we began discussions with them. I believe it was in June. Tim will probably either shake his head or nod. and we've had that discussion about how we might rearrange their office provision with the clerk of the council. So that's an ongoing discussion. Their lease, I believe, is up for renewal in January of 23. I hope that helps, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Just before I come and bring Tim in on that, so Jack, you're absolutely right with the, whilst we're keen for an answer, there are reservations. One of the statements that came out from a very large council at my conference was that a great many of these projects, the reason they've only spent 3% is simply because the building inflation rate is so rapid that actually it's making projects unviable whilst they're in the in-tray of the Minister for Levelling Up. They're simply, by the time they make a decision, they're not viable anymore. So that's a concern for all of us.
Totally agree. Just as an example, I heard yesterday of an example where the building costs, they weren't on a fixed rate because nobody's going to give a fixed rate at the moment. And they came back and said the costs were 30% higher than what they'd quoted.
Yeah.
It's interesting. 35 was the figure that was quoted yesterday in Leicester. There we are. But I mean, I'm sure all our officer colleagues here know that because they're dealing with that day in, day out, trying to buy the materials. Tim, if I could bring you in, and then Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just very briefly, and I must admit, just after I put my hand up, Jerry actually answered part of what I was going to say. So yes, end of January 23, the lease to the lease to the town council expires. Rob Harrison, who will be speaking later, has started those negotiations. As Jerry said, I think it was back in June time. There was a further recent discussion with the town clerk, and we have committed to issuing heads of terms, which will include a proposed rental in early November, so within the next week or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. Thank you for that. Jeff, over to you.
Yeah, just comment about the construction costs. As you know, we're trying to sort something out with the Sidmouth Beach Management Plan. Those costs, I think, went up by more than 35%, more like 55% on construction materials. DEFRA are now talking that the calculator has been looked at to be tweaked to account for that, but everything went quiet when they swapped MPs in charge. So we're still waiting for a decision on that, but there is some movement, I'm told, because they do identify that a lot of these projects are stalling at the first hurdle of the costs have gone up.
I mean, we are having a report under agenda item 10, property and FM team, and I'm sure George will let us know, because there's a considerable number of projects listed within there which are ongoing or pending start, and of course they are all they're capital projects that require building materials. So we'll look forward to that agenda item. Are there any other questions or comments, or are panel members, forum members happy to go forward with these recommendations, that we note the content of the report, and that's it? Everyone in favour? I don't see any dissent. No one's glaring at me or red crosses or whatever else it is. So yes, thank you very much indeed. Debbie, if you can mark that recommendation as approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We now move to agenda item 8, the Place and Prosperity Team update from Alison Hayward. Over to you, Alison. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chair. Yes, the brief update on the projects here. I'll just highlight a couple of things, because obviously members have had the reports through. So it just in the last couple of months, in respect of Seaton Jurassic, members will be aware that negotiations are now taking place with Seaton Tramway in regarding heads of terms for the lease, the marketing of the site having been concluded. In respect of Drill Hall, matters have now concluded with Rockfish, and the lease has been entered into. And we expect that they'll be on site fairly soon with their design team, and works will commence early next year. As I think has already been mentioned in the meeting, we're still waiting to hear on the Axe Valley Levelling Up funding bid, likely at the end of this year, as has been mentioned. We do have a project manager that we're now working with, so that we're looking at some mechanisms for being able to commence any work as soon as possible if, for instance, we're successful. That would still be the early preparatory work. But if not, the appointment of the project manager will be beneficial anyway in identifying how we can move forward with this. And the Devon Place Urban Renewal Project, that's coming towards a conclusion in its first stage, really, with the work on the regeneration strategies. And we're meeting again with the groups next week, discussing the potential quick win projects and business case from those. So I think that's about it from myself. I'm happy to take any questions on that before I hand over to Jerry on item 8 in that, the commercial investment.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Alison. And might I just for the record, thank you and your team and the legal team for getting us over the line from very protracted negotiations over a long period of time for the drill hall and Seaton Jurassic. It's not been an easy ride, and obviously a great many members of the public have had a view, which they've been very vocal about, and I hope both of those projects will proceed and bring great amount of prosperity to Seaton and Exmouth respectively. So thank you for your report. In terms of item 8, be interesting to hear from Jerry in this respect, and also if I might bring Councillor Rowland in on that score, because the commercial investment review will be bound and be constrained by lending rates, and of course with yesterday's announcement of another hike in interest rates, that will have an effect on our policy. But Jack, do you want to come in before we move to Jerry?
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Alison, for the reports. Not so much a question, just again really pleased to see progress being made. Being a Seaton councillor, I'm obviously pleased to see what's happening with Seaton Jurassic, because that's obviously from a resident's point of view. There's been concerns seeing an empty building now for best part of 18 months. So the news that's now emerging that the tramway have actually been granted the lease is great, and I just sincerely hope that now the heads of terms have been issued, that negotiations can progress smoothly. And I'm sure, if needed, I'll be happy to help smooth any troubled waters in that process if necessary. I'm not expecting any, I hasten to add. I just hope they are progressing smoothly. Thank you.
Your jug of oil is ready, just in case those waters do become troubled. Thank you very much, Jack. Jerry, over to you, sir.
Chair, thank you again. Been tasked with looking at the commercial property investment framework. Members have looked at this previously and approved it, but there's some queries as to what we can do legally, given the change in rules with Public Works Loan Board loans and what have you. So, Chair, just to give you a quick update, and maybe it belies the amount of work that's involved in this, but we have revised the scoring matrices, and that's now complete, which does crystallise what we need to consider whenever we're looking at an investment prospect. We are looking at the revised governance, and that's being redeveloped to take into account the views expressed by both cabinet members and ward members, and to have them involved in the decision-making process. So we're trying to capture those views. I think it's very, very important that members have confidence that that's the approach that's being used. And when I come to present this in due course, I've actually done this as a checklist so that members can actually look at the comments that they made, and we can show them where that has been included in the framework. The revised framework in its totality is being drafted and should come forward for consideration later this year. I'll hold my hands up and say I have had some slippage on this, and that is down to me. We will take this, of course, to Asset Management Forum for recommendation in due course and on to Cabinet, and as it requires an agreement for borrowing and an allocation of budget, that will have to go to full council. So really very confident about this. We're looking at a number of very, very good sound projects. If it gives members comfort, I've done this previously. Now it was exclusively property investment. The last place I worked, that was a portfolio of 100 million, of which we were earning a relatively small sum of money, but £2 million a year tax free, which we were able to put into frontline services. That's not a small sum. The council I worked in before are still earning currently in the region of about 10 million. Obviously, I'm not going to name names and things like that because that's not appropriate. But if we had an additional income of £10 million coming into the council, I don't think there's a councillor that would object to that. So really, what we're looking to try and manage is economic stimulus, because we're no longer allowed to do commercial property investment, that is investment for yield. So what we need to do is make sure that the investment prospects that we look at are going to provide that economic stimulus and meet obviously the council's wider plans. Again, happy always to take questions, Chair.
Jerry, thank you for that clarification. Tim.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted, two things really relating to the investment work. Firstly, Jerry has taken responsibility for the delay recently. In fairness to Jerry, this was considered back by AMF, I think it was back in 2021 or early 2022. The delay, obviously, until recently has not been with Jerry, it's been with me. So apologies for that. But there has been work sort of ongoing behind the scenes. The rules have changed. So it has become something more complex than I think was previously envisaged. Having said that, we now have an early draft and we are now making rapid progress. I suppose I'd also just wanted to come back in and remind members what this is all about. So this is not, so previously we had, and the reason I'm reminding members now is because it has been some time since it was last considered by AMF, is that we previously had a commercial investment fund, and that was about generating commercial income. We acquired one asset, which was Ocean on Exmouth Seafront, using that investment fund, and that investment has been very successful, and Touchwood will continue to be successful. This investment framework is something different. So this investment framework, we labelled it as a place and prosperity investment fund when we brought it to AMF previously, and it's not about the driver behind this is not about generating a commercial income. The driver is about enabling things to happen that are good for our district, or enabling things that are good to happen, that are good for our district, and to happen sooner than they otherwise would without our involvement. We would be looking to obviously cover our borrowing costs, and indeed for there to be a risk premium, which would in effect be the commercial return. So there would be a return, but it's not about it's not about driving the commercial income. This is something very, very different. It's very much this is sort of an enabling fund. We envisaged that it would assist us potentially in bringing forward certain developments on our own land by having an established framework in place and a fund in place. It would enable us to respond better to opportunities and needs. So examples could be our sites in Seaton, our two employment sites, also the employment site at Cloakham Lawns and Axminster, which certainly the two Seaton sites have been sat empty for a very long time. Now, if we were to be unsuccessful at levelling up, and there were no other immediately identified future funding streams, then this may, and if we have this new investment fund adopted by then this could be an opportunity, if indeed we could still make it stack up financially. But likewise, it could also be used to assist third-party developments. So where we might want to invest in something that's outside of our current ownership to enable something to happen. Likewise, we've got Hayne Lane in Honiton. There may well be opportunities there as that comes forward. So I suppose, and apologies, what I've just said is largely what I said at the AMF when we previously discussed this, but as it was quite a long time ago, I just thought it was useful just to remind members what this is about. And we intend, as Jerry has said, to be able to come forward initially to AMF and then on to Cabinet before too long with some proposals. Thank you
very much, Tim. It's actually very helpful, certainly very helpful for anyone watching this on the live stream. I don't know how many people there are, or those who watch afterwards, because essentially it goes away from councils being expected to be property speculators to fill holes in their budgets to actually being socially responsible and having economic drivers behind it. So I'm very grateful to that. And thank you and Jerry for your honesty about the slippage. I think you are doing yourself a little bit of a disservice, because as you've said, the goalposts are consistently moving, and every time you compile something, a report has to come, has to be considered, has to be voted upon, and by the time that happens, the goalposts have moved again. So I'm grateful for your honesty. But I wouldn't be too hard on yourself. AMF has a role in this. And we'll move forward and make sure that we do good investments that provide social and economic benefit to East Devon. So thank you both. Councillor Hookwait and then Councillor Young, if I may.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, talking generally, really, and from this perspective of my portfolio to do with leisure and a provision of leisure and also the provision of cultural facilities, would the Commercial Investment Fund consider investing in leisure and cultural facilities where there was a very clear need to do so? That's my question, really. I'm going to keep it very general. So thank you, Chair.
Chair, happy to take that.
If you wouldn't mind, please, Jerry. Yes, thank you.
Okay, Chair, thank you. Nick, thank you. The fundamental of the investment fund is that we look at situations where market failure exists. That is where typically the private sector would not go in and do this because of it could be site conditions, it could be any one of a number of reasons. What we're trying to do is write us a framework that allows us both flexibility without being too prescriptive. So leisure options can certainly be considered. The fundamental is that there will be a standardized process. I need to stress that, Chair, that there will be a framework, so members will be able to see what has been considered and ruled out, what has been considered and is supported. So the aim of this, and it's something that I learned in my last place of employment, is we support, I think it was, we made 10 purchases out of commercial investment, okay, before the rules changed. We considered over 1,100 prospects. So 0.1% of what we considered we took forward. Now that was a commercial property investment scenario. And I was accused by some members of being too fussy. Well, I'm quite confident that I was fussy enough, because there's still good investments and they're of an institutional investment grade that we can refinance and what have you in those scenarios. So coming back to Nick's specific question on leisure prospects, there has to be a case for it, but it also has to stack up. That is, we have to be able to determine what the return to the economy is in the process. And by using a standardized process, members will be able to see very clearly and very transparently how that process works. So I hope that makes sense. I will take members through an appraisal process in due course, and I hope to present this in person, because it'll make a lot more sense. And potentially we could use a worked example then to actually show you what could go through and what may not go through in due course. Does that help, Chair? And maybe directly to Nick, does that help to clarify?
Yes, I'm all for a system that is open and transparent. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And again, I echo that. You know, the ethos of East Devon District Council under this administration is to be open and transparent. So actually having a process that is eminently transparent and logical, essentially it stops us investing in Bitcoin mining companies or anything else that may come back to bite us at some point in the future. Councillor Young, and then I think, my apologies, I'm just going to see the order that we have here. I think it's Councillor Young and then Councillor Pratt and then Councillor Rowland. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been watching how councils invest for some time, and I know that Timbridge caught a cold when they invested in Newton Abbot town centre, and then they haven't got the funds or the justification for investing anything further into it. Torbay invested in the Amazon warehouse just opposite Sky Park. That seems to be quite successful. So you have to be very careful what you invest in. And now, as already mentioned, the rules are now changed on the finances. We've got the sewers depot at Greendale that we pay a rent on, and it's becoming too small for our facilities. And we've also got the issue of how the hell do we charge up 30 odd vehicles all at the same time. So that we've got to be looking at that. And we've also got facilities at the street scene that need consideration. Now, is it the best use of that land? Could it go into a less expensive location? We haven't got any facilities for street scene where we're doing all the development over at Cranbrook and the West End. And we're now talking about another new town over there. So there is investments that we need to make in our own stock at the same time. So I don't want to lose sight of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. And yes, very valid points there. Now, Debbie, I've just noticed that Councillor Pratt disappeared. He's now back, so that's fine. I was just going to say that would affect our quorum.
No,
But
you're fine, Chair.
welcome back, Jeff. Obviously, internet in OSM is dipping in and out. The floor is yours, Jeff.
Thank you. I want to say the drill hall completion of the lease, that's very welcomed, and I'd like to thank Tim and his team there they inherited this property. It's been empty for such a long time, and it's good to see now that this is all being completed, and I'm sure Rockfish will do very well there. Sidmouth has a strong economy, a long tourist season, and good news all round. Thanks very much, Tim and Alison.
Thank you, Jeff. Jack, to you, sir.
Thanks, Chair. Going into the subject that Jerry was talking about, I would hope we'd be utilising a very similar matrix to what's used in the capital bid programme in the scoring basis, because that is, I've found to be a very useful way of how those bids are actually scored. So I'd like to see the same process, and I get the impression that's what is going to be utilised in this process as well. Leading on to the sort of investments that could be made, I noticed in a subsequent report further down the line that there is evidence that there is still a very strong demand for small commercial units. And Tim mentioned about the sites in Seaton, which are exactly what they were intended for. So I think without prejudging it, there seems to be a very good fit between those two things, because anything that helps with bringing more diverse employment into certainly, if I can say, Chair, our part of East Devon, has got to be welcomed.
Thank you, Jack. I think it's fair to say that the matrices that you referred to, the one that Jerry is proposing, the one that you use for your capital bid allocations, the ones that we used on the IRF panel, it just makes it fair and equitable. It makes it auditable, it makes it transparent, and it means that anyone can come back at any point and we can provide justification as to why something got over the line. Jerry referred to it there, 1,100 possibles and 10 actuals, because that's what scoring matrices are for. It's not just putting a finger in the air or, overt lobbying or anything. It's done on logical, sound, ethical grounds. And that's the only way forward. So I applaud that, and thank you, Jack, for your comments. Tim.
Thank you, Chair. I just very quickly wanted to come back in on something Councillor Young raised regarding depots. I don't necessarily, well, I don't know yet, but it may well be that this investment fund isn't appropriate for depot type use of investment in terms of our own stock. However, I just wanted to assure Councillor Young that we have Alison and myself are at the very, very early stages of a depot review project, working closely with Andrew Hancock, as you know, the service lead for Street Scene. And in fact, that project has started with a visit to, not obviously the depot sites we are very familiar with anyway, but it also involved a visit to the Greendale recycling facility, which for Alison and I, who hadn't visited before, that was quite an eye-opener. So we have visited that property as well. And we have also visited a relatively new depot outside of our district just to look at what others are doing. So we are at the very early stages, but that is a piece of work that is now happening on the basis that we absolutely appreciate that our current depot facilities are getting to a stage where they're going to require quite considerable investment, and we need to consider, is it right to invest in those sites, or is it right to look at a different model? So we are at the very early stages, but that work has now started.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. That's good to know. Okay, so with no further hands up that I can see, may I ask the three members of the forum here present to note the report? Have your approval for that? Lovely. Debbie, thank you very much. If you can mark that as approved.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we now move on to agenda item 9, which is the estates team update. And may I invite Rob Harrison, who's with us. Good morning, Rob.
Morning.
To present your report, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a brief update on some of the things the estates team have been up to over recent months. Starting off, as you see, obviously we still have quite a significant day-to-day caseload, which hasn't been helped by staff shortages over the past sort of year or so. We had 2 vacant posts within the team for a long time, which we've now successfully been able to fill. So work is ongoing in terms of trying to reduce the backlog of cases and sort of deal with some of the long-running projects that we've got on. On that note, we have got one of our new starters who's joined the meeting, Kirsty Butler, who's joined us as an estate surveyor. Kirsty has come to us from Portsmouth City Council and is working on an active caseload of rent reviews, lease renewals and valuation work at the moment. So I'm sure you'll all sort of join me in welcoming her to East Devon, but I thought it'd be useful for her to join the meeting and see how AMF works. So moving on, our our occupancy rates within our let estates are very good. We have very little in the way of void property. Those that are void tend to be the very long-term ones where there's an alternative thing. So we had things like the drill hole, which was vacant for a long time, but there was obviously an alternative proposal in the pipeline. So certainly demand is good, particularly in terms of sort of industrial units. We get quite considerable inquiries, and coming back to the comments that Jerry made earlier in response to Councillor Hookway, certainly in Exmouth we get a lot of inquiries, and it's a market that we don't have any workshop space, particularly in Exmouth. We've got the little garage units at Marpool, but they're not sort of purpose-built industrial space. So it'll certainly meet some demand that we do have within Exmouth once that project comes to fruition. But yeah, obviously the longer term impact on the let properties as a result of the sort of ongoing economic position remains to be seen. But at the moment, it remains fairly strong in terms of demand and occupancy levels. So in terms of terms of point 3, there is a typo in there. We have just done all of the council's insurance valuations. So I apologise for the typo, but instead of £950, it should be 950 million. So yeah, it's quite there's been a little bit of a difference, but in terms of it's a significant piece of work, and yeah, it takes quite a lot of time and effort every year to produce these valuations. You're talking about all of our housing stock, all of our commercial stock. So it's quite a significant piece of work, particularly when we're coming off the back of a bit of a staff shortage as well. So it's quite a good achievement to get that over the line on time. We also had a success in terms of the acquisition of 25 acres of land at Broadclist, which I'm sure members are all well aware of. That's obviously been an ongoing piece of work for several years now, to try and deliver this. Well, initially it was a site, and then it was this site, and we've worked sort of quite hard in terms of trying to not only identify a suitable plot of land, but also to actually get the site acquired and deliver it so that work can progress in terms of actually making the site usable as part of the Clisp Valley Regional Park. So that's a really good result for the council in terms of delivering that site, and hopefully it'll be beneficial for years to come in that respect. So and then the last point that we've raised is we've actually seen quite an increase in cases where people are looking to gain access rights over our land. So previously, a lot of the things we had were people wanted to buy bits of garden land or to lease a little plot of land or something like that. But it seems like there's a little bit of a shift in focus in terms of people wanting to gain rights over land. Now, some of this is due to developments, people trying to squeeze another property in somewhere and need a way into it. Some of it is where people have pressures on parking. But one interesting sort of development on that is also where people don't have off-street parking at their property. There seems to be a bit of a move towards people desperately trying to get an access to be able to create one, to create a facility to charge electric cars. So people who are keen on that side of things, obviously, if you don't have a driveway or something like that, then it's very difficult to do it. You're either looking at is there a one in a car park you can use, or how do you actually charge your vehicle up overnight when it's outside of your house, sort of thing. So that's just an interesting thing we've picked up. So that's quite a sort of an interesting sort of element that we're working on. Certainly in terms of valuation, there's potentially some significant valuation implications. Some of these rights are quite valuable. It involves quite significant negotiations, and some of these are fairly complex valuations. So it's good that we're at full strength to be able to deal with that increased demand. I think that's all we've got. So any questions from the floor?
Thank you very much, Rob, for your report. And may I probably say on behalf of Roland, thank you for your clarity on item 3, having just seen disappear. And it makes it look like there that we sort of own a patch of land in Broadhembury, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. So in order, may I come to, I think, Councillor, Councillor Pratt, Councillor Rowland, Councillor Young, Councillor Hookway. Over to you, Jeff.
Rob, the number of cases you have is quite large, but I'm interested about the number of vacancies you have at the moment. How many of those are industrial units? And what is the position regarding retail units? From memory, I don't think the council have many retail units, but perhaps you could put me right on that.
Yeah, so we haven't got any vacant industrial units at the moment. The only thing we've got is a garage site, which we've now agreed terms for, a little lock-up garage that we've now agreed terms for. In terms of retail, we only have one retail property, that's at Millway Rise in Axminster, and that's let and hopefully remains so for the significant future.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Jack, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Rob, for your report. Great to see that the vacancies have been filled. So if I've got the name wrong, was it Kirsty Butler?
Yes.
Welcome to Kirsty as well. Glad she's joined our meeting this morning as well. I did have a question in point 1 on your reports where you mentioned about the 400 active cases, as to whether that equates to what, is that also what the backlog is? And I was just interested to know what the approach is about tackling the backlog, whether there's a case for saying that you can actually ring fence that backlog so you actually tackle it in 2 stages. Is there any new cases that are coming in are also being dealt with as quickly as possible, but because you ring fence the backlog, you've got separate people that can actually just work their way through that backlog and it's not continuing to grow? I just interested to know what the approach is about the approach on that.
Yeah, so it's really a case of prioritizing things. So it's looking at what the cases are. So you've got quite a range across the board of things. So some of them are more pressing. So it might be things like like a request for landlord's consent that we've recently had in. Now, obviously things like that are relatively time sensitive. So we need to respond within a reasonable time. Otherwise, we're effectively deemed to have given consent. So things like that, we need to be jumping on. But there's other things like sort of lease renewals, which we can pick up as we go. Where they're 54 at leases, tenants continue on holding over, so they're less pressing, and we can kind of pick them up as we go along. So having the additional 2 surveyors in post means that we can actually pick a lot of the backlog of cases up quite quickly. In terms of sort of lease renewals and rent reviews, a lot of it is there's a chunk of work up front, and then it's kind of, you've done the valuations, you've done the work, you've kind of got the notices out to people, and then you're working your way through the negotiations as you go. So it's quite good for new starters to pick up, because obviously they come into it with a fresh and empty caseload. So where we had staff leave before, you were then turned to people who already had 100+ cases on the go and saying, well, are you able to pick up any of these other ones? So it's in terms of the 400 cases, sort of a chunk of those are cases that are due in the future. So it's not all a backlog. So it's not all doom and gloom. Some of this is effectively our workload, our pipeline of work coming up for the future year as well. So there's quite a significant amount of work that we've got coming forward. It's just a case of balancing the priorities and making sure that we deal with the important things first, but hopefully mop everything up as we go.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jack. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I was at a meeting yesterday about habitat mitigation and it's been an embarrassment for me as a member of that committee that Exeter and Timbridge have had SANGS areas for some time and we didn't have any. So it was rather pleasing yesterday that we presented that we have purchased this SANGS area, and now I hope that we can get a few more sometime shortly. But thank you very much for getting it through, because it has been one of my major aims in the last couple of years to get a SANGS area started. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. I'm sure that your thanks will be taken on board. Nick?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for letting me speak out of turn. I want to raise an issue that is particularly an Exmouth one, and I'm not sure whether this is the right place to do it, but I just want to run some thoughts of mine across, particularly to Rob, because I know this will concern Elise. And the issue concerns around the van lifers that are living in the lorry park at the present time, and that's an unsatisfactory situation. And the question has been in informal chats with other cabinet members as where could they go if we told them to leave. And having walked around the area, recently I came across the Warren View playing fields that we've recently leased to one of the local sports teams. And my question is it possible, is it a feasible idea to suggest that we could put van lifers there through some form of sublease? Now, I know I'm probably way out of my depth with this question, but this is a particular Exmouth problem that we do need to try to look for a solution, and I'm just really throwing a ball up in the air at the moment. But if you've got any suggestions or helpful advice, that would be much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Rob, just before you come in on this, I think it's fair to say, obviously, that the Warren View playing field is subject to a lease with a third party. So we do have to be careful with what we discuss in open session. So, Rob, bearing in mind the need for confidentiality and commercial sensitivity in that regard, could I ask you to perhaps respond to Councillor Hookway with any thoughts you might have on that subject?
Yeah, I mean, where we've got a site leased to a third party, ultimately they would have to be involved in any discussions. Now, the lease itself probably won't permit that use, so it would need some sort of variation of the lease. But first and foremost, I think it would need to be something that the tenant were firmly on board with before we kind of set too many hairs running.
Okay, so thank you very much for that clarity. Thank you.
Jack, you want to come back in?
Thanks, Chair. In view of the subject that Councillor Hookway just raised about van lifers, if there's any correspondence between Rob and Nick on that subject, can you please ensure I get copied in, because I've been dealing with that particular subject because of my responsibility as finance portfolio holder for car parks, and obviously where the van lifers are involves a car park at the moment. And we have already been having discussions through Simon Davey and the planning and legal team about that issue. So I think it's important that we take an overall view about this, and we don't start running off in different directions with different officers getting involved as well. So I just think we need to be careful to make sure we approach this in a concerted way.
Thank you, Jack. Highly appropriate.
That's on board. Thank you. Yes.
If Rob, if you could make a note of that and ensure if there is any further correspondence between yourself and Councillor Hookway and others, that Councillor Rowland is copied in. That would be very appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
So, members, we have had the report. We've had some clarification questions. With no further questions on that, may I ask the Asset Management Forum members to vote to note the report, please? Everyone in favour? Lovely. Thank you, Debbie. That's a unanimous yes for that.
Thank you, Chair.
And finally, we move to agenda item 10, which is the Property and FM Team Update Report. And thank you, George, for joining us, and thank you for your patience. I can see there's been some comings and going in your house. Does it involve children or perhaps pets or? No?
Just a very noisy washing machine, that's all.
Well, technology then. Over to you, sir. Thank you for presenting.
Okay, good morning to everyone. My report is really straightforward report. It's basically an update on the work that we've been doing over the last over the last 6 months, and perhaps going forward another 6 months, that sort of thing. Items 1 to 1.4 to 1.7 basically covers the plan maintenance and the compliance work. Items 1.8 to 1.11 covers the reactive work. Item 1.12 basically deals with the capital work, and item 1.13 is the capital proposals for the next financial budget. Okay, so the main things to take away, well, obviously there is a lot of compliance work that has been taking place and planned as well. The main thing to take away is that in terms of compliance on item 1.6, we are about 90% compliant. We've got 3% warning and 7% overdue. There is an explanation in the report over there what we mean by compliance, warning, and overdue, so that should be clear. Okay. Also, in terms of reactive repairs, I have to confess there is a little error in the table on 1.8. The in-house number should be basically what the contractor's number is. So the in-house, it is 49% and the contractors is 51%. Sorry about that. Okay, so there is a distribution.
We all picked up on that. We were just too polite to say anything.
Okay, so there is a distribution there by months, and then the thing to notice is that most about half the cases are dealt in-house. Okay, so it's 49% dealt in-house. Then there is a number of graphs over there which basically shows the cases are open and closed both for in-house and for contractors. And then 1.10 basically it shows the allocation of the work per type of asset. Okay. The main thing to take away over there is that leisure centres basically they take most of our work basically, and then corporate properties being most of the other big chunk. In terms of we split that in contractors and also in-house. For the contractors, most of the work is in the leisure centres again, and for the in-house team, most of the work is in the corporate properties, okay, and also toilets and things like that. At the end of that item, I've put some reference there to comparisons to previous reports or the previous period that we looked at, and we have seen a reduction basically on both the LED managed assets work and also the work that is done by contractor in LED properties as well. Okay. 1.11, basically that table over there shows the distribution, where the work is gone. Okay, and the blue is contractors and the orange is in-house work. And then going to item 1.12, this is a update on the capital work. This is approved capital work. The work, basically work is being done. There is work that is to be done, but of course we've programmed this work over 3 years anyway. So some of the work is not due to be done anyway. Some have slipped a little bit, I have to admit that. But it is not unusual to have that sort of slip as well. In terms of cost and what we are experiencing at the moment, because some of the approach that we've taken on this is that we face the work Okay, so we basically have tendered the work according to when we're going to do it. So we are not seeing that there have been huge increases from the time when we fixed a cost. So basically, by the time we complete the work, we don't have huge cost. Where we find issues is when things that we haven't identified, okay, and then come up. For example, we're doing some work to the shelter, one of the shelters at Corner Gardens, and then we were expected to replace the whole roof structure, but then once we took the roof off, basically we need to replace everything. And that cost us £14,000 extra. So that's, you know, it is, but obviously it's to do as well with the price increases, but it was more to do with something that it hadn't been identified, and it was impossible to identify before we took the roof off. So that's the update over there on the capital, on the approved capital work. And then 1.13 is basically the capital proposals for the next financial year, 23-24. There is, I think there is only 8 proposals this year, well, next year, and it basically adds up to about £1.7 million worth of work. That's pretty much my report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed for that very comprehensive report. It's one of these ones that I somehow would like to be able to encapsulate into a single slide and send to every resident of East Devon District Council, because I think it's fair to say that the sheer complexity and scale of what you and your team undertake every single day, and the planning and the implementation and procurement is such a monumentally huge thing, but most people never see it. You just get on in the background, things get done, right, and everything looks as it should, but they don't see that work. Having just come here in Axminster at our Guildhall from a project which escalated as soon as we took something down, something else then came down, something else then was found, then you found something else, and these things do snowball, and it's those unknown factors that just eat into our cash, but there's no way we could know. You just can't know until you with building projects till you take the thing down. So thank you very much indeed for all you and your team have done, and for this report. It's very helpful for AMF members, and in fact all members, to be able to refer back to it. So if we are questioned, and we inevitably will be, we can say, well, this is where your money's going. This is where your council tax is being spent on providing and maintaining facilities. Even if you don't use it, it's still being spent. So really, thank you so much. Genuinely, I appreciate all you and your team are doing.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pass that to the team.
Thank you very much indeed. If you would, I'll be very grateful. So can I bring in Tim, if I may, and then Councillor Young, and then Councillor Rowland. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Chair. And sorry to come in at this stage before other members. Yeah, it's really interesting what you just said regarding the scale of the work. It's really interesting that actually, as far as my teams go, the property and FM team is the largest of my teams, and actually, as George's report shows, there's a huge amount of work that goes on day in, day out, and if it weren't to happen, things would crash quite quickly, very quickly in fact. But it's actually the team of all of my teams that attracts significantly less attention from the public and from members. So I think that's interesting. So yeah, no, I agree absolutely with you on that. I just wanted to come in on a couple of points which I suspect may well be some of the questions that other members might ask in a minute. So I just wanted to get in first, if that's okay. Thank you. So yeah, really good level of detail within the report. So thank you, George. And I think it's helped by solid data and useful visuals. It really helps with something like this. So thank you. I wanted to pick up specifically around a couple of areas relating to LED. So I think it's worth flagging, and George did briefly, but I just wanted to flag again. Paragraph 1.10 is really useful. And again, this level of detail and this theme is not new. This theme has been reported in previous reports from George as well. But I think paragraph 1.10 and the visuals set out really clearly for members the scale of our work on LED occupied properties. And in particular, two statistics really sort of jump out at me. 42% of our reactive works are on LED properties. And also over half of our reactive works, which are by contractors. I'm not sure if Georgie's correction earlier, whether that changes that slightly, but if it does change it, no, it doesn't. Okay, so over half of our reactive works across our portfolio by contractors. So that is in effect external spend on LED occupied properties. So again, that's really, really key statistics. And also sort of finally on the LED subject, I wanted to come in regarding capital projects. So both current projects, so approved projects that are in train, but also future projects that are being bid for in the current round. There's obviously a heavy emphasis there on again on LED occupied properties. I just wanted to sort of pick up on, we are very mindful as a service of the new leisure strategy. So we are very mindful of that, and also the emerging picture generally. So we are very mindful of that, but that doesn't mean that certain works don't need to be done. So we had, particularly in as capital bidding round, we had a lot of health and safety and other urgent related items come through. But I am conscious that in terms of our next round of capital bids, which will be discussed in the capital strategy and allocation, I think that's the name of the group, capital strategy and allocations group, over the coming months. I'm sure there will be further questions asked around some of the LED properties. And it is an emerging picture. And obviously as officers, we will be ready to, because I think that's the forum, not today. So when we get to that stage, officers will be able to sort of detail in quite a lot of detail exactly why those works are included, notwithstanding our direction of travel within the leisure strategy, if that makes sense. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Tim, for that explanation. Yeah, I think it sets out your stall very clearly, and again helps showing anyone reading these minutes or watching this presentation, watching this broadcast, as to how much it costs to keep on delivering leisure facilities for East Devon. And I'm sure Councillor Hookway will want to come back and comment on that point. So if I could bring in Councillor Young first of all. Jack, are you happy to defer to Nick before I bring you in, or do you want to come in before?
I don't mind.
Yeah.
Don't mind. Nick,
if we stay out of committee first, and then we come back with you. So Jeff, Councillor Young, and Councillor Hookway, if you want to comment, have your say.
Yep. Wonderful report, very eye-opening, and in view of a lot of comments that we get on social media, that what do East Devon do for us, and you look at that, and I don't think many people realise that LED is being, all this maintenance is being spent by East Devon on the LED, and now now I get moaned at all the time. Now what's LED? What's East Devon doing for us? So I wonder if we can get some. I'm not saying publish the whole report, but that would be. But we need to be publishing some of the headlines and get it into the social media network, so we can explain that we're doing this and we're doing that, and now we're making things safe. Now all the safety issues that you're doing, and the other headline one is obviously doing things that are benefit the climate change emergency, anything like that. We need to be now beating the drum on these. Thank you.
I do. I'm sure when you say moaned at, you mean questioned by passionately interested parishioners. I think that's the term you were using there.
Misguided.
Thank you. And again, what does East Devon do for us? Well, that just brings up the whole People's Front of Judea issue again, but we'll come back to that. Nick, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you to George for his report, which is very interesting indeed. Without mentioning particular projects, 1.13 is the table I'm looking at. May I suggest that these projects and these works that have been identified are brought to the LED Monitoring Forum, so they can be discussed there, because that is, I think, we can then get a response from LED, which is the appropriate place for it, and then we can discuss the works. Let's leave it at that.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Nick. We'll make sure that happens.
Okay.
Councillor Rowland, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. It's a bit worrying, really, that other people can start reading my mind. I'm getting really concerned about that. But I'd like to echo your thanks to George and the team. I think that's it's really well merited, and I hope when he passes on the thanks, that's not just from you as the chair, but from everybody on this committee as well. Two things I wanted to say, and Jeff touched on it already, was I do think we need to be sending out more press releases and getting into using our Twitter and social media pages on East Devon to publicise more of what we're doing in this particular area. So I think that really is essential at the moment, because there is a lot of misunderstanding. Any of us that look at social media, we know very well that the public have a tendency whereas just to refer to the council, not realising perhaps which particular council is responsible for what. So I do think it's important that we probably do publicise this as much as possible. And my other point was following on, Nick must have read my mind as well, because there are things that are in that capital build list which I do think need to be brought back to the LED forum, because we've already asked for, we know we've got the short-term issue about their funding requirements, but we've also asked for a longer-term financial plan and business plan to be presented to us. So I think it's important that the two things marry up, so that it can be discussed as well at that particular forum, because there are things in that list that I won't mention here because it's an open meeting that do give me some concerns. There is one item in that list as well that refers to the public toilets in Collerton, which have been marketed, and yet we're talking about remedial works to those toilets. And I'm just wondering how the two things marry up. If there has been interest through the marketing exercise, how that marries up between what a potential new tenant might be looking for compared to the remedial works that we're looking to do. I'm not sure if that can be discussed in this public meeting at the moment, or whether it needs to be taken offline.
Tim, you're able to respond on that, Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So conversations are taking, so this is Collerton, so conversations are taking place with the parish council. I have to confess, I don't know if it's my internet bandwidth, but I can't actually view that particular table. It's all fuzzy, so I can't read specifically what those works are. What I would say is, in terms of the terms of that particular site, there may, well, I can't, as I said, I can't see what the works are, but there may be works that we have to do to get the buildings to the building to a sort of a fit